And we actually do not have a 10-minute break right now. But if you want to go grab some coffee, that's fine. That's all right. We ran a bit long, so we're going to go right into the next topic with Josh. And that is the art of finding a startup mentor. So, Josh.
Hey.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
We have never met.
No, sorry I missed you last week.
This is us meeting for the first time.
Yeah.
So I'm going to approach it like this. Instead of interviewing you, I'm going to pretend that I just met you in a bar and we're just going to have a conversation.
Sure, sounds great. My favorite kinds of conversations.
So Josh, tell me about yourself. Who are you?
So I run community for a startup called StackPath.
Sorry, so maybe people who don't, who want to grab a coffee, go and grab a coffee. People who want to stay, have a seat, because otherwise it gets a little loud for everyone else. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. So I'll start over. I run community for a company called StackPath. StackPath is, if you think of the millions and millions of devices that communicate every day, they communicate with each other and with people. We believe that security should communicate in the same way in terms of infrastructure in the cloud. So we're building a platform that will essentially create that one unified platform to do all that stuff. It's the usually, like to this point for security, it's add-on. It's not built internally. It's not built from the beginning. So we're kind of embedding that platform to kind of do everything together.
What brings you here? Why are you in Stockholm?
Well, I was in Europe already, and so...
do you have any links with Sweden at all?
What's that?
Do you have any links with Sweden?
Well, so I have some friends here in Sweden. I did some work with Startup Grind in Stockholm with Jonas Almelink a few years back. Our previous company, we were community builders as well, and we incorporated them. And when I told him I was going to be at Wed Summit, he said, come up. So I've got some meetings on Monday and Tuesday, meeting some of the local startup ecosystem folks. So it'll be a busy week.
Well, you're very welcome. We're going to talk about how to be an effective startup mentor and why startups need mentors.
Sure.
And I saw in your bio that you have been a mentor for a number of accelerators. Can you tell us a little bit about?
Yeah, sure. So I've sort of been a mentor kind of my whole life in a way. When I was in school, when I was in college in the States, back when I was 19, I participated in Big Brothers Big Sisters. My little brother is now 32, married, lives with his wife and son in Los Angeles, and we're still in touch. So it's kind of like a lifelong commitment to that. But as far as tech startups and kind of getting into that, I've sort of been an entrepreneur for the better part of about 20 years, and I've always been around other entrepreneurs. And so the tech, the tech mentorship started kind of back in 2009 with Techstars companies. Then I started globalizing our platform inside of SoftLayer, and so I became a mentor for lots of accelerators around the planet. I've been pretty fortunate to be able to do that. My background is psychology, so I approach mentorship in a much different way. I think a lot of mentors are great, and we all bring our own kind of experience to the table. I've been lucky to work in politics, nonprofits, and now technology, and have a psych background. So I kind of approach things a little bit differently when it comes to mentorship. I tend to lean towards the human side, and I really try and get in the head of the people that I'm working with. So I've been really fortunate. I live in San Francisco, and there's plenty of accelerators there that I mentor. Yeah, so it's just been kind of an organic growth. The more I've done it, the more I've enjoyed it. So so it's just been part of my job is to be out there in the community and make sure that entrepreneurs succeed.
Would you say there's a difference between an advisor and a mentor, and if so, what is it?
Yeah, I definitely think there is. Mentors are there to help guide you. They're not there to tell you which way to take your company. We're there to support you. Advisors are more specific to your startup and what it needs. I think of an advisor, if I start a company on my own, I need certain types of advisors. I need an expert in legal, I need an expert in accounting, I need an expert in my product, I need an expert in, sales and marketing, distribution and growth. Those are advisors very specifically. I'm looking for advisors to help me in each type of a vertical for my company. Mentors are there to say, hey, like, how are things going? Like, what's going on with you and what's going on with your company, and how can I help? I think very rarely mentors should get into that advisory space. I think you have to have a very clear definition of, hey, I'm going to do this with you. I'm going to be on your journey. I'm going to be a guide, a Sherpa, whatever, a friend. And then advisors, I think it's a little bit more structured. I think it's a little more, it's just more formalized.
What's your sweet spot? Like, does an entrepreneur need to be in a certain stage, certain vertical, or doesn't that matter at all? Do you talk to the CTO rather than the CEO? Like, what's your ideal mentee?
Yeah, so I've been fortunate that as I've been in the tech world, I've kind of learned a lot more technology than I knew 6, 7 years ago when I started with SoftLayer. I'm more of a generalist myself. I'm a strategy, biz dev, relationship guy. So when I meet startups and they ask me to mentor them, I'm kind of tell them my background and what I'm good at. And, I've just been fortunate to have the technical expertise to be able to talk a little tech along the way. I don't really focus on one thing. But if I have a mentee come to me and say, look, you've been doing biz dev basically your whole life, you've been an entrepreneur, I'm like, great, let's talk. If they say, hey, I need somebody to like dig into my code and do code review, I tell them I'm probably not your guy. Yeah, so it's kind of that authenticity on the mentor side to say, look, this is what I'm good at and this is what I can't do, because you never want to give startups in the mentor-mentee relationship any bad advice.
I've been a mentor for 500 startups, Seed Camp, Techstars as well in the past. So I've sat through these meetings, one-to-one meetings where you mentor them in real time.
Yeah.
During the week, Seed Camp week in particular. And I always find it funny, and this is, I'm going to come across as a jerk because you do this too. When people put on LinkedIn as part of their resume that they are a mentor to 500 startups or a mentor to Techstars, because it's not really a job, is it? It's sort of what I did on the side. So.
Well, I'm not so sure that that's our fault or if it's a glitch in LinkedIn's platform.
You're saying they should have like separate.
I think that they should have that in more of the interests, and when you dig into your LinkedIn. But I approach my mentor-mentee relationships very seriously. I've been very fortunate in my career to have some really great mentors along the way, both men and women that have taken their time to really kind of teach me, guide me, and help me through each stage of my career. And as I get older, I look back and I think how thankful I am for that. So I take it as a job. I mean, really, at the end of the day, time's the only real commodity, right? You can't get it back. And so I take it as a job. So if I'm a mentor at 500 startups, I'm all in. And if I can't do it with 500 startups anymore, then I close out the LinkedIn and say, this is when I stopped. But I think it's that mentality of really getting your kind of like rolling up your sleeves and making it a job, because they rely on you. They're giving their time just as you're giving your time. At the end of the day, we all want you to win. So I take it as a job. So
that's great.
Yeah.
Great answer. And you gain something personally as well. If you're a mentor, you learn as well, right? So,
totally, yeah.
But do the startups sometimes pay you either in equity or cash, or is it like all pro bono?
So never in a mentor relationship would I ever ask or accept any cash or equity. I think that comes along the lines of what your integrity are as a business person. And that's kind of to your point before, what we were talking about, the difference between mentors and advisors. I'm a formal advisor of many startups where I have formal equity. I'm on the board. I've also invested in many startups myself where I'm on the cap table. When it's a more formal advisory role, then you're involved. And I take that very, very seriously. But from the mentorship perspective, and this is just my opinion, I know there's various opinions in the industry, but I would never take equity from somebody that I was just mentoring. I feel like that kind of is a ethical no-no, but that's just me and what I believe. If I was doing a startup and a mentor asked me for equity, I would shake their hand and say, it was nice to meet you. Wishing you luck too. But on the advisory thing, as an entrepreneur, I'm all in to give the right people advisory equity, for sure.
Well, the topic of this session is the art of finding a startup mentor. How would you advise entrepreneurs to go about this? Like, how do they even identify the people that they should be,
Sure.
liaising with?
Well, I think there's a lot of ways. There's places like this. There's conferences all over the world in our industry where you meet kind of veterans in the tech community. There's a lot of online platforms out there that are kind of popping up for mentorship. There's also, you mentioned LinkedIn, AngelList. There's groups like this where you could probably find, community experts and investor experts and like that. I think the simplest advice anybody could give if you're looking for a mentor is you want to go find them, figure out where they're going to be. If you need a specific type of mentor, go find out where they're, like I'm here today, but there's other mentors that are other places. Go find out where they're going to hang out and do your best to get that kind of introduction to them. Or just write them. I mean, I get a lot of unsolicited email inbound. I try to answer as much as I can, and sometimes that'll turn into a mentor-mentee relationship, and sometimes it doesn't.
That's a good one, though. What would spark for you to be interested rather than not? Like what cold emails in particular?
Yeah, so for me, I do kind of the diligence that I feel like I would need to do. I'd look at their background, look at their experience, where they're coming from. I have kind of a soft spot in my heart for first-time entrepreneurs because I was one once. And I was a miserable failure, and I lost a lot of money. And I really wish I would have had even more mentors around me. So it's really kind of a feeling, if I feel that they're trying to sell me something or trying to over-convince me based on what I see just on their digital footprint, I probably won't get into that. If I find that they're a very authentic human being and a very sincere human being, and it looks to me like through our conversations there's a level of integrity, then I'm always happy to kind of dig into that and see what's next.
So you're saying it's important to you to personally like the person as well?
I think so. You don't have to.
It's a serious question.
It is a serious question. I guess I'm a little different. Like all my mentees, I completely fall in love with them, right? I fall in love with most people I meet. It's just I really, like that human connection. I grew up in a very small town where there was not a lot of people. So for me, yeah, I think I have to actually like the person. You don't have to agree with them. I think it's like any relationship you ever have. I mean, your partnership, your business partners, your partners in your personal life, you don't always agree with them, but you have that level of respect and you like them enough to keep on.
Yeah. I find that our previous panel was about investment. I find really good investors are also really good mentors.
Usually.
So if a startup is lucky enough to find investors and also good mentors, is there still a place for other mentors to come in and kind of like highlight other?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, being in San Francisco in the Valley, of course, like being in tech and doing what I've done for so long, you come across people in all sectors of tech, and so I know a lot of investors, both angel and institutional, and many times I'll have institutional or angel investors come to me and say, hey, look, like the startup that I invested in 2 years ago, they're starting to scale, and they've just done a big formal round, and they want to put biz dev community and all that stuff, and I'd really like you to talk to them. And so I think there's always room for that. It's just kind of an awareness on your investors' point to see who's out there and who's maybe not out there.
What about stage? Like, is being a mentor to someone time limited in the sense that maybe they really need you in the first 3 years of their journey, but maybe they really need you at the end of it, like towards an exit or whatnot? Or if you're a mentor for the life of the company?
I mean, I think it's your philosophy, right? Like I mentioned early in the conversation, like I started mentoring somebody when I was 19. I'm 44, so my quick math, that's about 25 years that I've known Ben. And so for me, when I get into a relationship with a tech entrepreneur and I find a mentee, then I'm in with them until their next journey and the journey beyond that. I'm in that with that person, not necessarily with that idea or that company. But I know not all mentors have the capability to do that. It's different for every mentor. I'm also not a father, so I don't have a family that I have to worry about. So I have a little bit more time than some of my peers my age. So it's just what works for you personally as a mentor, I think. But I guess the quick answer to the question is you're all in forever with that person. Once you're their mentor, you really want them to succeed, whether it's the venture in which you met them or the next one or the following.
Good answer. What should an entrepreneur ask from a mentor? What should he expect, and what should he not ask for?
Yeah, I think the first question that would be asking a mentor is, why do you want to mentor me? I think it's really important to get the intentions of your mentor verbalized. I think that it's equally important for the entrepreneur to verbalize what their hopes and aspirations in the relationship are too. I think you really have to level set expectations in that relationship, and it's really important to do so. So that's the first question I would ask. I think a couple other questions that I would ask is, how much of your time can I rely on? Like, how involved can you be?
Is it also about making introductions to other potential mentors and investors?
Absolutely.
So
I think if you mentor
managed.
somebody, it's your network is theirs. Vice versa. I had one of my mentors tell me probably 20 years ago that my customers are, once I'm doing business with somebody, their customers are my customers and my customers are theirs. So I think it's a kind of an ecosystem development thing where if I know somebody that should be coming in to help, push them along, then it behooves me to do so. That makes me a better mentor.
Do you have any recollections of where you went really wrong, where you mentored someone and it went really badly?
I mean, I've had mentor-mentee relationships end, but I don't know that it was on a negative note. I do my best to level set those expectations for the beginning. And so I always say, look, this is what I can give based on my life and what it looks like. But I can't really say that there was that one messy, ugly disaster story. I've been really fortunate. I'm really selective with who I get into those relationships too. Yeah.
Well, let's hope it stays that way.
Yeah.
We are out of time.
Look at that, right on time. Nice job.
Thank you so much for listening. If you need a mentor, go talk to Josh.
Yeah.
He might be interested.
Thanks, Robin.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.